Welcome to the Heartland Cycling Network. We've got some special shows coming up, and this one is on the ABCs of bike maintenance. Anytime you have a bike, you should understand what you need to know to take care of the bike in a minimalist fashion, at least, because you don't want to take it into the bike shops all the time if something goes wrong, okay? And the ABCs are air, brakes, and chain. So basically, you're talking about tires, you're talking about the braking system on your bike, as well as the chain and drive chain gearing. So this particular episode is on air, which is tires, and Todd K with Greenstreet Cycles out of Papillion. He's the service manager there, and he's going to be talking about the ABCs of bike maintenance, air, and how you should take and work with your tires.
ABC's class. Basically, we break it down to air, brake, chain is what it basically stands for. Air meaning tires. Proper types of tires. There's basically a tire for every type of purpose. We'll talk about tubeless. Have you guys, what kind of bike do you have?
A felt.
Okay. And is your Moots the only one that you have?
No, I have a specialized rock hopper.
Okay.
That I've kind of built up. Trail bike.
Now, are any of your bikes set up, or can they be set up tubeless?
They're tubeless.
Okay.
All
So we know the advantages of tubeless. Now, here's a good question for you. If you guys are riding tubeless right now, do you carry anything with you just in case you do get a blowout? Because even though you are tubeless, it's not a bulletproof thing. You know, you still can get a puncture. You can still get quite the gash. Do you carry something with you?
Yep.
What do you carry?
I carry a plug tool. I carry a patch kit. I carry a candy Crank Brothers. I think it's the 19 thing tool set.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm gonna get is a tube.
Okay.
If that's for long rides.
Right.
If I'm on the trail, I won't. But if I'm doing anything over 30 or 50 miles, I probably won't.
Now, have you guys ever been in that situation where you do get a puncture and you had to change out in the field?
Before he went tubeless, yeah.
Okay. So that might, that might happen. You could get that gash that's going to kind of stop your tubeless setup. The plugs will work. Now, do you carry an air source with you?
That's why we're
That was the part of my problem with my last flat was that
His CO2 is bad.
the cans were only for, I think it was for a road bike.
Okay. Yes.
And I only put probably 15% of the air in there.
Oh, okay.
So it would have been riding on the rim.
So that's a good example of why I personally prefer the pump. Here's your typical CO2. You know, if you're getting it brand new, if you've never had it before, this is the setup you want to get that has the air chuck with it. And then you just keep the air chuck and you just kind of get new ones. These can't be really refilled. They're basically a one-shot deal, and they do come in two sizes. The bigger volume will be for bigger tires. Yes? That I'm not sure, but I can find out for you. These are aluminum canisters. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So they are recyclable. The reason why I prefer the pump over the CO2 is I do like how these can be mounted to the frame under the bottle cage, but with this, you have to keep buying your air refill. With this, you always have a free air source. And there are many different types of these, many different volumes of the pump itself. On my mountain bike, which is a 3-inch wide tire, I have one called the Big Bore. It's just short and fat. Obviously, the wider the body, the more volume that you can push, the less you'll be out there pumping. So just talking about the basic tires, this particular tire, it's a good kind of all-around versatile tire. It will easily cover pavement, little looser terrain like the Wabash. But basically, any bike, any tire, you can take it wherever you want to go. But is that bike and tire designed for what it is that you're doing? That's why I'm always a big proponent of getting the bike that's designed to do what you want to do. These can be upgraded, of course, but just to start off, you want to get the bike and the setup as to what you're doing. You said you've never had to do a tire, take a tire off. I do have a setup here to show you how to do it. This is a kind of an old wheel off a Walmart mountain bike. The things that you must have as a minimum, as like kind of a patch kit to get you changed out or anything like that, you have to have a tire lever. When you get them new, they're going to come in pairs, sometimes in threes. And I'll show you, I think that has a sticker in it. You should have either a tube or a patch kit and your air source. That's key. If you choose the patch kit, there's a couple different kinds. This one, the larger one from Park Tools, is kind of your classic patch kit with the little tube of glue and then a bunch of different little sizes of the patches. What a lot of folks don't realize with this one is to do it correctly, you have to put the glue on when you find the hole. You put the glue on, you got to wait for the glue to dry and then put the patch on. The other kind is this very nice and simple one. The adhesive, it's just like a sticker. You find your hole, put it on, and then reinstall. If you're going to go patch kit, I would definitely recommend this one. It's just a lot easier and faster.
Who's that one by, Tom?
I'm sorry?
Who's that one by?
This one's also a Park Tool. It is my opinion that patch kits in general are just Band-Aids to get you home. I haven't had to change a flat in a while. That means I'm gonna get a flat tomorrow when I do my ride. If I did get a flat out there and did have to patch it, I would use my backup tube right away. I just like to have it nice and fresh. I don't want to have that thought in my head. Now when you're changing your tire, to remove the tire, if you are out in the field, you definitely have to have at least one of these. Like I said before, they're going to come in pairs, and I'll show you why. Because on mostly the road bike tires, it's a much, much tighter fit. It can be difficult to get these off. So the lever side is this side where you're going to peel the tire back, get it underneath the bead of the tire, and then flip it. Okay, so to remove the tire, use your tire lever. I'm going to have that as a backup. And basically you want to peel the tire back. And where you put this, the reason why these hooks are here, because if it's a tight fit, you're going to try to put that lever right in front of a spoke, if you can. And if it's a real tight fit, you can hook the tire lever on the spoke so that you can take the other one and work the rest of it off, just like that. Okay? So once we get this thing going, this one's gonna be kind of easy. I've used this before, and it's an older tire. These do stretch too. Once you get it off, you're just gonna start working the bead off. And you can pull off the tire and tube. I like to pull it off at the valve at the same time. So the tube is on the inside.
So you're taking apart a tire?
Yep. So that if we needed to replace this, we can. This you can do out in the field too, if you want to. If you're changing a tube, you can run your fingers through. I always do this when we do this as a simple service. Run your fingers through carefully and feel the inside of the tire. Because if you do still have something sticking in there that caused the puncture in the first place, and you don't see it, if you put a new tube in, you're still going to give yourself a puncture. So now, if it's a brand new tube, so on my bikes I know that I have a brand new tube. They are, even right out of the box too, tubes are absolutely dead flat. And they do not have this shape to them. Even out in the field, if you're changing a tube, you want to put some air in it and give it this shape. And just basically work the tube back into the tire. now that the tube is back in, you'll,
On the hubcap again.
we're going to put it back on the wheel. You'll probably see quite a few different ways to do this. I've seen it where some guys like to put the tire on first, kind of halfway, then put the tube in, then put the other half back on. I like to get things done quickly. So what I like to do is I hold the tire and tube at the same time at the valve, find the valve hole on the wheel, and just work the whole tire on kind of at the same time. When we're working on the bikes, this is how we fix a flat tire. So now, once you have your tire and tube back on, you're going to use your pump or use your CO2. I've never used the CO2 before, and I believe you just got to put it on and just put the air chuck on and it fills up pretty quickly. This is also why I like to use the pump, because if on older tires, what can happen is one of the bead might stick out, might not catch, and the tube will stick out, and that's where you will get a very loud blowout and puncture. So for speed purposes, I'll use the compressor and try to air this up. I did unplug the compressor because we did our Instagram live. But if you're doing this at home with a compressor or even with a floor pump, what also we've been seeing lately is a lot of people dusting off their bikes from the wintertime, or they haven't just used them in a while. And we're seeing a lot of people think that they need a full tune-up just because the bike's been sitting around. That is not necessarily the case. If a bike just sits for a long time, it doesn't necessarily deteriorate or just stop working. What happens is, and always happens naturally, is that the tubes and tires, they do naturally lose air over time. So our suggestion is to carefully air up the tires, take it for a ride, and see how it's working. When you are airing up a tire, and even if it's only partially low, when you're putting air in it, you want to do it slowly. I'll use the trigger just very, very lightly, and then check all around the edge of the rim on both sides. Go the rest a little bit more, and then go the rest of the way. And keep checking. And this one is good to go. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
How do you know how much air pressure to put in a tire?
So PSI, your pressure for your tire, really depends on the type of bike that it is, what kind of riding that you do, your own body weight. I can give you a ton of different examples. So classic bikes like road bikes, drop bar bikes, which are those right on that stand right there. Those have always typically had a very, very high pressure. So anywhere from like 100 PSI to 120 PSI. That for that type of riding cuts down the rolling resistance, but you'll also feel quite a lot of bumps. So it really depends too on what the bike is meant to be doing. Those longer distances, higher speeds, longer rates of time, you want that a little bit higher air pressure. The opposite would be like a mountain bike with 2.5 inch wide. So mountain bike air pressure is typically a lot lower, and those can be anywhere from 50 PSI down to 30 PSI because of the type of riding it's meant for. And you have everything in between. The other thing that affects PSI is your body weight. So typically for me, I have 2 gravel bikes. My gravel bikes are set up tubeless. The beauty of a gravel bike is their versatility. You can ride pavement, nice hard, like the Papio Trail here, and gravel, those way out country roads. So for pavement rides, my bikes are set up tubeless. I ride 55 PSI, but when I know I'm doing a day of gravel riding, I go down to about 35 PSI. And on the lower pressures, your body weight's gonna press down on that and widen the footprint, giving you better traction. So there's a cap. So that was one of the next things we're gonna talk about is the two different types of valves that we will see. This one has a Schrader valve. Schrader valve just looks exactly like what's on a car. And it works the same way. Let's see if I have a little sharp point right here. So there's a needle in front, in the center actually. And you just press this, and that's gonna let the air out. The Schrader valve actually works on a spring. I was looking for an example of if we had a wheel set up with the Presta valve. Oh, that's what I grabbed earlier. So the Schrader valve is what you will see most commonly, and it's probably what people are most familiar with is the Schrader valve that looks just like what's on a car. The Presta valve is the skinny valve, which if I can sneak this bike out. Okay, this is a gravel bike from Specialized. The Presta valve is the skinny one, and it works very differently. This does not have a spring in it at all. What keeps this kind of from air leaking out of it is actually air pressure. The Presta valves hold higher air pressures better. The other thing too is that since it's just a smaller diameter of a valve, it means it's a smaller hole for the rim, making it this type just structurally better. The way this one works is there is a lock nut on the end of this valve. And in order for you to let air in or out, see I'm trying to press it right now and it's not letting air out, you have to unscrew the lock nut and now you can let air out. If you have one of these and you don't have the adapter at home, you probably cannot put air in correctly. You would either need an adapter or maybe switch these out to regular Schrader valves, which is not really recommended because you'd have to drill a hole in the rim. And that's a big hole. It's a 3/8 inch hole. We've done it before. So now that you have put air in, the trick to this and the key is that you have to remember to turn this, lock it back down, because if you go to put the cap on, you can actually let air out of itself. You'll see Presta valves mostly on pretty much every type of drop bar bike, meaning road bike, gravel bikes now, and especially if you're going to go tubeless, you need a special valve and they will always be Presta valves. Tubeless means we can actually take the tube out and do a proper setup on the rim itself so that you can run no tubes. The big advantage is that you also put a sealant inside, so if you do run over a small enough puncture, it will seal itself, but you can also run lower pressures. So especially with this type of riding, mountain bike riding, where you would want a little bit more footprint to give you better traction, you can run tubeless. It is something on each of my bikes that can be set up tubeless. I have them set up tubeless, but that doesn't mean it's a bulletproof, puncture-free solution. I always still carry a backup tube because you might be out there in the middle of nowhere and you might get a puncture. With this, it would have to be big enough that the sealant would not be able to seal itself, and that happened to me on my first ride. But the key is that not only does the tire itself have to be designed to be tubeless, the rim too has to be designed to be a tubeless setup. A lot of bikes will come with tubeless ready tires, but it doesn't mean that the wheel is tubeless ready too. So that's where if you wanted to get tubeless set up, just bring it in so we can spec it out for you and make sure it can be done. If you wanted it done and you're not tubeless setup, that's quite a big upgrade. It can be. Excuse me.
You know how long the sealant stays in the tire in a liquid form?
It depends on the manufacturer. Basically, you want to clean it out at least once a year. Or you can top it off every 6 months because it does get a little thicker over time. and if it's not swishing around, it's not going to do its job correctly. So you can top it off every 6 months, but change it every year. Do a refresh is what we call a tubeless refresh. Yeah. So that's going to be removing the tire, maybe even removing the tape, and just do a refresh. That's the best route. Yes?
Do you have solid core tires?
There are solid core out there, and there are some inserts. The Specialized actually used to make a bike that did have a solid core tire, but the ride effect that it gives you, to me, in my own opinion, was not good. Because you can't control the feel of the tire itself, and your tire is your only connection to the ground. That's why we always want to make sure they're in good condition, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, what to look for. But that solid tire did not have a good feel to it, and I think that's why you don't see too many of them out there.
Is it a balancing issue or?
It's just a really squishy feel.
Okay.
There was a bike, Specialized made one called the Alibi, that was more along the lines of a comfort style bike, so more of a relaxed upright position. And it was meant for kind of the student where, you know, you're commuting to and from school. And if you're on the way to school, you don't want to be late for class. So they had these puncture-free tires, but the ride itself, I think that's why they're not that great. There are inserts that you can put in there that hug the rim, but give you a little bit of a kind of a protective layer. There's also other types of inserts that can go right up against the tire. But a puncture-free tire, I don't think is unless it's that solid tire, there's really like no such thing. Because you definitely want the control and the proper feel of the tire to the ground. Now, when you're looking at the condition of your tires, the biggest thing is going to be that you want to look at is the wear of the tire. The rear tire will wear out first because our weight is more towards the back of the wheel, back of the bike, and that's where we're also putting power down. So this will wear out much, much faster than a front. What you'll see is this center part will start to flatten off. That means the material is starting to rub away and it's starting to get thinner and thinner and thinner here. And that means you're more susceptible to punctures right down the center. I would not recommend, when it gets super flat, to just swap the tires. I mean, you could do that, but that flat spot here is going to potentially affect the steering and the feel of how that bike rides on, say, flat ground. The other thing to be aware of is dry rot. Anything that's on here that's rubber, like brake pads too, yeah. Anything on a bike that is rubber, including rim brake pads, this bike happens to be disc brake. Over time, those things can lose its moisture and they dry out and can crackle. In the case of tires, the sidewalls of the tire, right about here where this reflective strip is, you will see it start to really crackle. And if there's not a whole lot of air in it and you squished it down like this, you will actually see it break and crack. With brake pads, with your classic type of rim brake pad, where those get brittle, they will just break off in chunks. And we definitely do not want that in brakes. The one trick to check if it's starting to dry rot, you can take a fingernail and kind of press it, especially with the brake pad. It should have a nice kind of supple feeling to it. If you are not getting that at all, it's time to change your tires or your brake pads. Any other questions regarding tires, tubes, changes, anything like that? By the way, if we missed introductions, my name's Todd. I'm the service manager here at our Papillion location. We have 2 locations. My main discipline of cycling is BMX racing. This is one of my race bikes right here. But in the past few years, I have really taken up a lot of mountain biking and especially drop bar gravel riding. I have two drop gravel bikes now. I have my own race team, and I've been a USA BMX coach for quite a while, and then I also now have been going into my second year as a mountain bike Devo coach over here at Swanson. So that's just a little bit about me. If there are no more questions about tires, I know I'm probably missing something because there's an infinite amount of information. We can move on to brakes.
Okay, thank you for watching the Heartland Cycling Network this evening. And just want to remind everybody to pedal on.